this is like, it's like being part of a music community. It's like all these like-minded creative types, very inclusive. Everybody's very supportive. And it was zines. It's like, I've always loved zines. I've always loved finding weird stuff, like literature. And it like checked every box. So I'm like, all right, these are my people. So I proposed my first DCC, my first like non-my rules kind of thing, Ninja City, stamped it. Once again, it went on. People seemed to like it. That was my first DCC project.
Hi, welcome to the Dieku Podcast. I'm Gary Snow, and today I welcome one of my favorite YouTube personalities, Joey Royale, who is best known for his awesome show, Joey Royale's Pizza Party. And now Joey isn't just limited to his fun show, but he also created such cult classics as Ninja City and WHPA Fairhaven, which we will talk about a lot more in detail coming up. But first of all, Joey, welcome.
Ciao, paisans. Gary, my cousin upstate. How you doing, buddy?
Well, it is awesome to see you here on my show. I've been wanting to get you on for quite some time. I have to say, every time Joey's Pizza Party comes up on my YouTube reminders, I am hooked.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks. You're helping my kids get through school. Thank you.
So I have to ask, and I'm sure everybody's kind of curious, the birth of Joey Royale. It's an awesome, well, I don't want to say character because you are Joey Royale, so we don't want to mix up things, but at the same time, you are who you are.
I am who I am. The birth of Joey Royale. Joey Royale was cesarean by choice. I punched right through and came out fully masked. Now, the birth of Joey Royale. Now, I tell you, Gary, this is a question I've never been asked before. So this is cool. So let me get the chronology straight.
Okay, this is a big unveiling, and we almost need a drum roll.
Big unveiling. It's a big unveiling. So I was about 21 years old, and this is the true story. My father and I were at the Italian club in town. They used to do like a spaghetti night, like every Thursday, and all the old Italians would get around. And my father and I, he was a member, and he's like, you got to come check all these guys out, because it was funny. They were characters there, and that's where I get a lot of my material. So there's like chicken and pasta. You get big piles of that. It's all men. And at the end, everybody gets a complimentary drink called the Cafe Royale. And just joking around, my dad, was cheers. He goes, "Hey, Joey Royale." Boom, click. I said, "Dad, that's it. If I ever start a band," because I was really into music at that time, and if I ever start a band, that's going to be it. So it just became kind of like a running joke. So every time there was a karaoke sign up and I do like, Suspicious Minds or something, they're like, "All right, Joey Royale." And I started to hone my act as a performer. And then, I moved to the city and started bands, and it just stuck. It was Joey Royale, Joey Royale. And then I moved home to Connecticut, after spending about a decade in New York City. And I met some guys and we started a band. And then Joey Royale became a necessity because I became a public educator, and I had to keep the two worlds separate. I didn't want anybody in on my secret. I wanted to work during the day and be the rock and roll wolfman at night. So it was kind of like my nom de plume or my stage name. And then any project that didn't have to do with my day job became Joey Royale, or the band was the Royale Brothers, or like Royale Production, all that kind of stuff. So my creative being is Joey Royale. I have to package these things because I'm in a pretty intense day job. I'm now a public school administrator. I'm an elementary school principal. So keeping these delineations are very important to my sanity and for me being able to keep my job. Not that I'm doing anything that could get me in trouble, but I like to have boundaries. I think boundaries are good. So that's the birth of Joey Royale on a postage stamp.
Well, that's a great story. And my wife is Italian, and we, in Calgary, where I am, there's the Italian club, and we go there. And I have to say, when I watch your show, it feels very comforting because I know a lot of folks similar in the way their mannerisms. So it's cool.
Yeah. It's not, we talked about this a little bit right before the show. It's not really an act anymore. There's a mask, but that's just to protect my identity. What you see is pretty much what you're going to get in real life, Gary.
And so what kind of music do you play under the all these variations of your bands? Any
Yeah.
particular style?
Yeah, each band had a kind of a different thing. I'm not actively playing right now, but when I was active, the Royale Brothers was very influenced by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and Johnny Cash, kind of like a lot of murder ballads, kind of like intense kind of stuff like that. And then after that ended, I started a band with my wife called Get Haunted, which is where Get Haunted Industries comes into play. See, it's all interwoven. And on that band, my wife bought me a banjo, and I hooked it up. I electrified it and put it through a vintage tube amp that's sitting right over there. And she played drums. Neither of us had played the instruments before. It was kind of like, hey, let's get some tools that we don't know how to use and see what we can come up with. And that became like, people compared it to if the Cramps met the Carter family. So kind of weird garagey horror stuff mixed with, clawhammer Appalachian folk music. So that one was really fun, and we got pretty far with that one. Then we had kids, and we decided to focus our energies on that in their infancy. And I'm into play. I'm teaching myself like some surf guitar, like a heavy reverb. I like the dark, weird Monster Magazine kind of music stuff,
Cool. Well, I'm a fan of that kind of surf music, and I have an upright bass. So who knows?
Nice.
Maybe we'll have to jam together sometime.
I saw Reverend Horton Heat when I was about 15 years old, and it changed my life forever.
Yeah, that's some good stuff.
And then Jimbo on the stand-up bass, man. Yeah.
And then you mentioned your family and your kids. They've been on the Pizza Party show I've seen.
Yeah, Elvis Royale. He's in 7th grade right now. We just got back last night from his first con. We went up to NoCo Con up in Watertown, New York, right by the Canadian border, where my friend, the Neon Lord of the Toxic Wasteland, lives. And we were both slinging our loot up there. And Coral is in 4th grade. She is not into the gaming yet, but eventually, I can't push her. She's going to find it her way. But they're both my sweethearts. And
Elvis has a little mustache, just like the old man.
Yeah. We got strong hormones in the family.
Cool. Well, let's kind of jump into your gaming history. Crossed over with your music, and I know you've been a wrestling ring announcer. So, tell me, when did you decide to get into designing role-playing games, and like how was your background into role-playing games in the first place?
I'm a latecomer, so I started playing games, I believe, in about 2015. So I'm 43 years old. So do the math. I don't know. I was older to get into the games. Growing up, I didn't know any kids that played. I knew it existed because of an unfortunate. Well, all murders are unfortunate, but there was a Dungeons and Dragons murder in the town next to mine. Oh, it was
like honest to goodness satanic panic.
Yeah, it was a satanic panic thing. So we would drive by this house, and my father would say, "Look, there's the Dungeons and Dragons murder house." And that was one of the spooky drives we would take. So, but I never understood it. It was just that was it. And then, of course, at the same time, this was early to mid 80s. The same time the cartoon was going on, so there was this really strange dichotomy, and I was into that. The weird. All right, there's the sugary sweet, and then there's the dark and deadly, and this was always in my head, but I never had anybody to play with. So I don't know. I think like right before my kids were born, I bought like Magic the Gathering, and just to play with my wife while she was pregnant. Like, oh, let's try this. I was always into fantasy adjacent music. Like I'm a huge Black Sabbath fan. And like I'm into Rush. Like I have a very broad music spectrum, but that stuff was always cool to me. Long story short, I was in a bookstore, not looking for a gaming book, but I walked by the Dungeon Crawl Classics book. And Gary, it was like a bomb went off in my head. It's like, this is everything I've been looking for. It's got the 70s airbrushed van aesthetic. I'm flipping through it. It doesn't look like the 5e stuff or whatever else was on the shelf at the time. This is like, oh man, this is what the metal kids were drawing in their notebooks when I was, in school. I'm like, this is speaking to me, man. So what I did was still didn't have anybody to play with. So what I did is I said, my town, it's an old whaling town. I'm in New London, Connecticut. It's kind of, there's businesses that come and go. They can never get it together enough to have their renaissance. So we have a lot of bars that at the time were kind of dying off. So I said, I'm going to start my own mini convention. I'm going to make people come out, and I'm going to find friends to play. I started this thing called Drinking and Dragons, where basically I took over a dying bar for a night. I said, hey, listen, I got like 60 people coming in here, and we're all going to play board games. I didn't tell them what it was. Yeah, we're playing Monopoly and stuff like that. All right. You mind if we have, they're like, yeah. We need the business. You drink specials, this and that. So I got up to I ended up doing about, I think 10 of these. We went from like 30 people to 80 people. And I had people coming I had people coming from New York City. I had, Brendan LaSalle and Tim DeShane, all these guys from Goodman coming down like, oh, this is amazing. So and then I built a network of local gamers from that and some Rhode Island gamers as well. And then it got so big that I passed it off to some other local guys who wanted to make it like a tax shelter thing, a charity thing, which was great. And it's still going to this day. So that's when I started playing. But when I wanted to start creating, that's just who I am. If I get into something, I have to make something. I've always been of the ilk where, like, if it doesn't exist and I like it, I got to make it myself. That started with music. And then it was like action figures. I'm like, I collect action figures, obviously. I mean, look at me. I'm a weirdo. So it's like, I love that cartoon, but they never made toys for it. So let's make toys for it. And then it got to games. I'm like, all right. I love writing. I loved writing songs, and most of my stories were narratives, as I said, like murder ballads or ghost stories. I said, I'm going to funnel this. I'm going to do a bunch of research. I'm going to start making games. And that's where the game creation started.
And what was your first entry? I think you have it there. You can hold up.
Darkest Dice. So, Gary, this goes back.
Booklet?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, you'd find these religious pamphlets, the chick tracts, all around town. And it was all about, Darkest Dungeon was one of them, like all about how playing role-playing games can make you become a Satanist and all that. And I was really into the satanic panic. Just that the sociology and the psychology behind it always blew my mind. Every generation has some sort of religious extremism that affects the youth culture. And I'm hungry for it all. I think it's so neat. Like, there was the juvenile delinquents, the greasers, then there was the punks, and then there was the hackers and the D&D guys. So like, it's always the outcasts. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to play a trick. I wanted to do a simple writing project where I would just take the, original D&D and melt it down into something that was 20 pages long. And I found a local printer that could make them this size. It is the exact specifications from measurements to font to everything. So what I did, I ordered a bunch of these. Like, this was a Kickstarter, my first writing project, and I ordered a bunch extra, and I was just throwing them everywhere I went. I'd sneak them. I go into bookstores, sneak them into books, throw them in the Buffalo Wild Wings bathroom, like leave them around the mall just to start a little bit of a thing. And I got hooked up with Brad McDevitt, who is an artist from Goodman Games, who really has that classic old school D&D look. There's the art.
Yeah.
And it was a success. I was very happy with it. I'm going on. It's like fourth printing soon. So yeah, it was a really fun project. And it was, like I said, my first writing project, and it was very nice validation to have a first successful Kickstarter for my first successful writing project.
Did you have people that say, hey, I found this in Buffalo Wild Wings. I don't know who the hell you are, but like, I want to play this?
Yes, I've gotten a couple, because on the back, there's a little, it says, where did you find me? Post to #Darkest Dice. And then I've gotten some emails. Send gold, land deeds, and compliments to lordblood@gmail.com. And I have, some people have sent me an email saying, hey, I found this somewhere. Where can I get more of them? And that was really a big part of this. Like, I'm really into, I guess you could call it grassroots, but it's more like trickster kind of stuff.
Guerrilla. I wouldn't want to call it marketing, because it's not marketing, but it's like guerrilla, grassroots. Fun.
Zine culture, kind of like that kind of pre-internet conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, totally. And this might be a good time. Let me pop onto the screen here. So Joey Royale's pizza party. Who did the pizza hand? Who drew that for you?
That was made by an artist at Goodman Games. They just, when I got the show, they're like, okay, and here's your logo. I'm like, oh my God, Maron, this is perfect. So one of their house artists put that together.
Well, it does capture the vibe perfectly. And then maybe I'll back out. Just tell me for a sec, how did you get involved with Goodman Games? You've already got those connections from the game night. How did that grow?
So they have a great program called the Road Crew, where you can. Well, it's two-pronged fork. The Road Crew, where if you run games for them in public, they send you swag, anywhere from like license plates to stickers to bookmarks to beautiful belt buckles. You know, it runs the gamut. So I started to do public games, and I started to get stuff. So I started to become like the DCC evangelist. My first system, my first love, putting it out there. But then also Joseph Goodman, there's a great community there of third-party publishers, which is fertilized by Joseph Goodman himself, who very free, now I wouldn't say freely, but very generously gives out third-party licensing. So if you come up with a DCC product, all you need to do is give it to him. And if you get his approval, he stamps it. You get the logo, he'll sell it on the website, and he buys your books for a very generous percentage, it's like, all right, God, this is like, it's like being part of a music community. It's like all these like-minded creative types, very inclusive. Everybody's very supportive. And it was zines. It's like, I've always loved zines. I've always loved finding weird stuff, like literature. And it like checked every box. So I'm like, all right, these are my people. So I proposed my first DCC, my first like my rules kind of thing, Ninja City, stamped it. Once again, it went on. People seemed to like it. And there it is. That was my first DCC project.
And compared to other DCC games, which, I mean, you've got Mutant Crawl Classics, you've got other things, but did you always know you wanted to do ninjas?
It was just one of those things. I've always been into ninjas. I mean, what 80s kid was not? But I go through these phases where I drown myself in the media. So I just happened to one summer go down the rabbit hole of like watching as many classic ninja movies as possible. And they just spoke to me, and I'm like, oh man, because I was a teacher at the time too, and I was having lunch groups playing fantasy stuff, but really at the end of the day, these kids just wanted to go in and kill stuff. And I'm like, all right, how could I make this cool? How could I put it all together? So I do the Joey Royale list of all the things I love at the time. DCC, ninja movies, synth music. I'm like, boom. And it just like, all right, how about I just reskin DCC and put them in, put the character, one character class, they're ninjas, working magic. And, that we'll see where we go from there.
Well, it definitely captures the vibe of 80s ninjas and like American Ninja. And, I can't even remember how many ninja movies I watched as a kid. I don't even remember them all now. But I mean, every kid, I used to make my own throwing stars from like scrap metal that I would find. Yeah.
This is a love letter to that, Gary. It's a love letter not only to the medium of the film, but also the ninja magazines. And that was a huge inspiration. I do all these image searches to out of nostalgia. And one day I came across, which I think initiated the going down the rabbit hole of the movies, was just looking at old ninja magazines, the poster art, and of course, the ads in the back of the magazine.
Well, I'm going too far.
Ads in the back of the ninja magazine, I wanted to emulate the feel. Yeah. And the font is very intentional. The art is very intentional. I did not want a squeaky clean airbrush look to this. I wanted this to be something a kid in 1985 would have in the back of their Lee jeans on their bike.
And I think you captured it well. Who did the artwork for you, or was it a combination of different?
This is one artist, and it was a homecoming of a friendship. This is my friend Joe the artist. His real name is Joe Gillette. Joe and I used to work together at MTV. So before I was in education, I worked in MTV as a production assistant and associate producer. And Joe was a cubicle over from me, and we hit it off over action figures. And we hung out a lot, going out every night in New York, just, reminiscing about the old days and coming up with projects and talking about the toy lines we would make if we had the money. And then I moved back to Connecticut, and I lost touch with Joe for a while. And then we started to get back in touch. We were sending each other boxes of toys and all that. And I'm like, hey, man, I think you're the perfect guy for this job. You want to do a project together. So it was a really cool way to reignite a friendship that had lost its momentum just because of distance. So Joe knew exactly, I didn't even tell him anything. It's like, yeah, I need a bad guy. He's like, yeah, of course. They need a flat top. They need a ooze. Like, he had all the archetypes down. So it was a very pleasurable experience. Like, we were in each other's heads.
And let's take a sidetrack here. What's your favorite action figure line? What do you collect the most?
Oh, geez. That's a tough one. Well, I guess my ride or die is always going to be G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. That's probably my most extensive collection. I got a good deal of 1960s Joes too. But there was just something magic about all the different characters, all the different weapons, the personalization. I mean, that's an exercise in character role-playing game character creation in itself. So that's very inspirational. The bad guys, the mutants, it just covers everything. Masters of the Universe was big for me as a kid, but it's not an extensive line. So what I love is the knockoffs, all the fantasy knockoffs from the 80s. It's like, I'm a bigger fan of like Spectratron, like the guys with the glitter torsos and, that break if you look at him the wrong way and stuff like that, than He-Man, just because of the weird freakiness, the renegade. I don't care. I'm copying your major design and mass producing these things on airbrushed card backs. I love that aspect of action figures of the 80s. Huge Muscle Man, Battle Beasts fan. I just love them all. I'm a monster kid at heart. So Remco Monsters, my number one toy line, just because they did those so well. I could go on and on. Like,
so you must have loved
the weird stuff.
You must have loved the Toys That Made Us series on Netflix.
Yeah. Yep. I it's hard to name one. It's G.I. Joes and Monsters, but I love them all, especially the one-shot weirdo knockoffs.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. And let's talk about WHPA Fairhaven, Channel 13. What inspired this? You're from Connecticut, right?
Yep, I'm from Connecticut. Fairhaven is everywhere, Gary. There's a Fairhaven in, I think, every state in the United States. So I wanted an experience that everybody would be somewhat familiar with. So the deal is, it was right around COVID time. I was creatively exhausted. I was at a standstill, and I didn't know what I was going to do next after Ninja City. And so I sat down. I literally sat down one day at work when I just wanted a break from work, and I made a list. And it's become a practice since then, a list of everything that I love. And a lot of it was, it started with, so ninjas were done. Religious extremism, satanic panic was done. I did those projects. I felt really good about them. But that was, I got out what I needed to get out from that. So I made a list, and very quickly, Weird Al Yankovic, UHF, Pee Wee Herman, Radio Shack, old malls and video VHS stores, old VHS, signal interruptions, the Toynbee tiles, Bigfoot, it just started to write Weekly World News. And then boom, that's when it hit me. And I said to myself, I'm going to make a tabloid newspaper supplement, system agnostic, for role-playing games in general. I was heavily into, that was at the dawn of Stranger Things. I was playing Kids on Bikes, and I was playing Tales from the Loop, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, wait a second here. There's something else I'm pulling from this. The weirdo. I really wanted to celebrate, not tongue in cheek. I wanted to celebrate the weirdo. I wanted to celebrate the people that made me who I am today. The one for the short kid in class, or the one for the garbage pail kid collector. Something, I knew there was a niche of other people out there like me, and this was my beacon to draw them in. I was very isolated at the time. We were entering COVID, and I wanted to do something, and I want to do a game, and I always want something that's just a little bit more than the gaming product. So I realized that printing a newspaper was going to be cost prohibitive. And I did a lot of research on that. But then I watched the Walter Mercado documentary, Mucho, Mucho Amor. And if you're not familiar with Walter Mercado, he was the horoscope person from Univision who I watched as a kid, even though I couldn't speak Spanish. But he was mystical. He was the wizard. You know, you didn't know what was going on. I was entranced by him. I was entranced by Pee Wee Herman. As a monster kid, I loved horror hosts. So I'm like, let's smack. All I'm talking about here is television hosts. I grew up watching a lot of TV. I want to be Pee Wee Herman. I want to be Walter Mercado and tell the future. How about I get all these people together? Elvira, let's get them all in a room together. What the hell could these people do in a role-playing game? Naturally, solve something weird. Like the Elvira movies, like the Pee Wee movies. They're always the outcasts, but they always find something out and they save the day. You know, the Burbs was a big inspiration.
I love
So what I did is I all right, let's make this easy. I want to play something that my wife and her friends would play because they're not gamers really. So, all right, D6s, everybody loves. You can throw them around. Everybody's got them. You can be your favorite weirdo. Anything goes. I was obsessed with public access as a kid. I always wanted to be a television host myself. I was in the television world. I loved my town from when I was little, and I also wanted to write a love letter to my town. All these ads that you have right here, Gary, those are actual ads that have been manipulated from my hometown newspaper. So I went back to the archives from 75 to 85 and just pulled out ads. Like we had birthday parties at Pizza Pipes and Pandemonium. It was a pizza place and arcade with a giant pipe organ. Hypnotic, that was Hypnotic Enterprises. All I did was change the telephone number and the name. The backdoor ad right there, I changed the names of the bands, and there's some Easter eggs there. Thursday's Wicked Lester is playing. That was the original name of Kiss. Wolf Ghost is an old band of mine. So like this is all stuff that existed as a kid. I wanted to rebuild all of our towns from when we were little and have a pre-internet, pre-cell phone kind of Scooby-Doo investigation that was focused on weirdos being proud of who they were to solve mysteries.
Well, I mean, I absolutely love it. And I love the fact that these ads are also basically adventure hooks. You see the ad and you're like...
Everything, every single thing in every Fairhaven book is put in there with intention, whether it be the name. Something could be just as broad as Fairhaven Family Bowl. But then there's other stuff, especially with like Tales from Fairhaven and the Station Manager's Guide. There's particular things that I didn't even realize it, but are now carrying through. Like lore is being invented sometimes without me even realizing it. But if I could go back for 1 second, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I'm excited because this is a passion project. When this came out, this was strictly analog. There was no PDFs. There was nowhere to really sell this. So I wanted to see what I could do without a middleman, without a Kickstarter, and literally sell this stuff from my basement. So I got and made a mix them. But what I wanted to do was build a community, because if you're buying this, you're a weirdo. And I mean that as a compliment. This is not for your regular person. This is a very niche audience. Weird heroes of public access. So because I was so grateful for these people just buying this kind of sight unseen, trusting me, I made a list of everybody who bought stuff, of their home addresses. Like every time they would make an order, I would and like this time, I don't think I even had Etsy. I was doing this solely through Instagram. I was off Facebook at this time. This was only through Instagram. you would send me your address, you send me $10, and you get this in the mail. And then every month, everybody on that list, the original Fairhaven 99, the original 99 people that were the first to sign up, would get a mailing every month of an adventure hook. So you'd get a newsletter from the Fairhaven Library, addressed to you, sent out in the mail, made out of a copy machine. Or with a couple of extra bucks, I got like business cards made that was like your card, and you were like a member of WHPA. You were on staff. There was an adventure pamphlet about a cult at the mall, and you also got a postcard that announced the mall opening. And then I started to get into multimedia. I sent out playing cards, or I think it was Halloween time. I sent out Halloween cards that had a YouTube address on the back of it that would lead to a video that would be an adventure hook. So more and more stuff like that, multimedia, just because I wanted to tell all these people during COVID that you had friends out there and that I was thinking of you and I was grateful. And hey, let's build this world together. So that's WHPA, and it's been growing ever since.
Well, I mean, I absolutely love your, for lack of a better term, community building, which is very in line with DCC and Goodman Games and how they've done that. And do you have people that have been with you the whole time that are like absolutely invested in Fairhaven?
I have met. I'm not being. This is not hyperbole. I have met some of the best friends of my life through DCC, but also through Ninja City and Fairhaven, because I think if you look at the centrist of that Venn diagram, it's, like I said, a niche crew that all had similar experiences and growing up. So yes, so from my DCC crew, Tim DeShane was my sensei, get me into it. Brendan LaSalle, those are the big guys at DCC, and they got me into some other guys. Ninja City overlaps with WHPA, and I met my brother from another mother, Brian Shutter, who is the creator of Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland, and we talk every night. I just got back from his house. We are working on overlapping scenarios and games, and our own games we're coming out with our own products. I tried a bunch of different things, there was a Fairhaven get-together. So one of the mailings was, hey, open Zoom meeting. Let's all get together and tell tales about our towns growing up, or your town, or your Fairhaven experiences. I'm not really, I don't know how to do Discord, but on the Neon Lords Discord, there's the WHPA. So I'm getting into that. I taught myself simple coding and made like a GeoCities, like very prehistoric, emulation for Fairhaven, and people were posting on there. So I have to do better in that kind of digital community. But yes, there are people, and I get stuff sent to me. One of my son's friends, Paul Cthulhu from the Pizza Party, is actually the first recipient of the Fairhaven Young Creators Grant. So he sent me a manuscript. I'm working on him with that, and I'm going to finance his first 50 copies through Mix'em. So we're going to have a 12-year-old writing a Fairhaven supplement that should be coming out hopefully by the end of the summer.
Cool. Well, all that is so amazing. And then let's talk about your volume 1 of Tales from Fairhaven, which just you took Fairhaven and then added a whole bunch of adventure hooks to it.
Yeah, I just can't stop. Fairhaven is something that I think I can continue to put out with joy and with quality content for a long time, because it's a combination of all my interests, passions, and memories from childhood. And I have a lot of media to pull from as well. So this is this is where the Weekly World News thing pops up. There's no rules in this. This is a lot of adventure hooks, Easter eggs, advertisements that have led to other stuff. The Crypt of Cool is now my bi-weekly radio show on the local Connecticut College radio station. I spin for 3 hours there. So if you look here, Crypt of Cool, how to kill a monster. All right, so you're fighting a bevy of zombies in town. You got to go find that kid or that store that has that Crypt of Cool number 13. You got to find the money to buy it. And in that will give you hints. This is for the judge to come up with the hints on how to kill it. So it's all connected. There's no space wasted with fluff.
Well,
This is a collection of all the mailings as well, too. I wanted an anthology because it got to be cost prohibitive doing all those postage as the list grew. So now it's just every couple of months, I'm going to put out a new anthology of mysteries. But this one contains all the old stuff, some new stuff, and then some contributors like Brian Shutter and the guys, my friend Ben and Ted, who came up with an awesome kids game, like, you play as a kid, which is Don't Tell Mom and Dad.
That's also a favorite of mine, recently kickstarted.
Awesome. Yep. Then you got this was a big hit, the Sherman Glimp prayer card. Those were printed out and set out, and there's a crypto quote on the back of his prayer card, so you can find out what's going on with him. And Sherman has become kind of like the mascot of Fairhaven, the missing mascot. Like, what happened to Sherman? That's his obituary.
Where did you find Sherman's picture, other than the missing milk box or milk carton?
So that was one a while ago, even before I started WHPA. I'm not a great artist. I don't consider myself a great visual artist. So I just started to collect images from this person does not exist. So I know AI is very frowned upon now, and rightfully so. But this was not stolen from anybody's art. This was a combination of human features. And I just clicked until I found somebody that to me looked like they would be that, butterfly collared, secret phone freaker hacker guy from the early 80s. Heart of gold, kind of a rascal, kind of down on his luck guy.
And I love the library newsletter.
Yeah, that was really fun. That was like a way to get secret messages across. You never know if the Fairhaven Public Library is working with or working against the station hosts. So it's turning more and more dark as this project goes along. Like, there's a creeping darkness to this. Yeah, and Cedar Grove is the cemetery in Fairhaven. And Cedar Grove is the cemetery in my town. Growing up, my grandfather and father ran a gravestone business. So I spent a lot of my Saturday mornings playing with my He-Men and G.I. Joes in Cedar Grove Cemetery. And that poem, Cedar Grove, is actually the lyrics for a song from my band Get Haunted with My Wife. And when we had that band, our first album, for each song, it came with a trading card with the lyrics on the back. And that was the trading card, the guy with the bag on his head, that was the trading card for the Cedar Grove song. So it's all interconnected. Full circle.
And then Hank's Hullabaloo. I love the clown.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody loves a good spooky clown. Yeah. That's the one where if you go to the YouTube site, those are the 911 emergency phone calls from children reporting a man trying to get into their house through their TV.
Awesome.
And my kids did the voices. My kids did the voices of those kids. That's on YouTube.
So now I have to ask. I'm gonna remove this for a sec. What's it like in your household? Like, how's it decorated? It sounds like you have a very creative family. Like, is there vintage stuff everywhere? Action figures?
I have
everywhere?
A very patient. I'll say a very patient family. I married my best friend. She's a fellow weirdo, and she is a great inspiration. She's my editor. She's my creative control. And she's the one that I'm so appreciative that allows me the time to be creative, because she knows how much it supports my mental health. We have, I would say, so it's funny. Upstairs is very minimal, if you can believe it. We have a very minimal mid-century decor upstairs. A lot of books, but the furniture is rattan. Some atomic lights, but it's not like the rockabilly paradise you might think. It's very minimal. It's I would say tasteful, and we try to keep everything minimal because the madness happens in the basement. This is the where the Mozzarella Mausoleum takes place. When we bought the house, the people who owned it prior to us were very religious, and they were also woodworkers. So it came. This is one of the reasons why I bought the house. It came with a small room in the basement that used to be their Bible study. I quickly took it over, and there's cabinets there, like beautiful glass front cabinets. So I immediately put down, orange shag rug carpet, painted the walls avocado, and just filled all the cabinets with role-playing games and my action figures that were in Tupperware for years. So that's where the weirdos happen. And this is the other side of the basement where we built into a makeshift television studio. So it's like a mullet, business in the top, party in the basement.
Yeah, just in case your kids' friends come over.
They always find their way to the basement because they love it. It's the room that I always wanted as a kid. So I like, as you can see, compartmentalizing things. The normal world exists above, and then we go to the basement like Batman. You slide down the pole and you get the mask on. It's all that kind of stuff.
And I guess that the follow-up question is, what do you like in your day job as far as like I've noticed a lot of educators end up kind of designing role-playing games. There's just kind of that vibe of like, hey, I want to teach people to have fun. Yeah. And do you get to pull any of that into your day job?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a principal of an elementary school, and my whole family is in education. My father is a high school principal. One of my sisters is a middle school and was a high school administrator. So it's like part of the thing. I never planned on it happening, but I am, even as a kid, I was very aware of how fast time goes and how significant the change can be from a child to adulthood and that difficult period of in between of teenage years. And I always said to myself, I never want to grow up fully, but you have to be responsible with that. But how do you capture the fire and imagination, creativity of a child as somebody who has to pay bills, raise kids, and deal with insurance and all that other crap that comes with being an adult? And my job allows me to be in a perpetual state of enjoying childhood. So I'm always around kids, and learning is the coolest thing you can do in life. So it's an opportunity for me to make sure that kids that are learning are enjoying learning, and that we're introducing play into public education. So outside of all this too, I'm on a lot of state level committees, trying to push legislature into implementing purposeful play in early childhood classrooms, having inquiry-based classrooms, having setting up the flower shop or setting up the veterinarian's office and doing a month-long unit on that and introducing, math, ELA, and social emotional standards into that as well. So there's that role-playing aspect. And of course, every Friday I bring in my friends, my little friends, to roll some dice during their recess time and work on social emotional skills, problem-solving skills, and creativity in a safe environment.
I've always said, I think role-playing games in general, but role-playing games teaches you a lot of valuable skills from, social maturity and getting together and working as a team and working collaboratively for goals and just coming together and learning how to work with people.
Absolutely. And there's case studies now that they're doing it, I believe, at Yale and Harvard and other, big time places where they're researching and finding great benefits of role-playing games with people on the autism spectrum, people with emotional regulation. These are great simulations to experiment interactions in. So there's a lot of good here.
Cool. As we there's a couple more pages to flip through, and we can kind of show it on the screen. But just tell me, what is next? Is it Volume 2 coming out?
Yeah. So Station Manager's Guide just came out, and that's a more darker. Yeah, those are great. More darker kind of tales from Fairhaven that adds a little bit more depth to the lore. In this, it's very like tabloidy, Mad Magazine, Weekly World News, like just flashes with ads. The other the Station Manager's Handbook is a little bit more of Fairhaven history. It's a little bit more text-based. There's more stat blocks. What's coming out next is Tales from Fairhaven Volume 2, which is going to be a continuation of this kind of stuff, the real fun kind of weirdo stuff, with some contributors. And then shortly after that, that will be followed up with so in WHPA, there's like the big industry, looming tech villain named X-Tech, which is kind of like some sort of science business conglomerate where the big fence is, where everybody works but nobody talks about it. Kind of like Hawkins Lab almost, but I came up with it before Stranger Things, so don't worry. But I'm doing a handbook that X-Tech came out with to let Fairhaven know how they are saving this dying town, not to listen to the wingnuts, the naysayers, and what X-Tech is really doing from their PR perspective. So there's going to be a lot more Easter eggs in that. And then halfway through the book, you're going to enter some sort of signal interruption where it becomes this very dark collage project I came up with that shows prior X-Tech failed experiments. So half of it is all this stuff, Gary, I want it to look like you found it at your local laundromat, or you found it in the, take one free area of your library. They're supposed to look like toss away materials that you might, consumable literature for the masses.
Well, I absolutely love it. I think in what you're doing, it's probably amongst the most innovative game design that I've seen. So I really appreciate it. It speaks to me, and I'm sure it speaks to a lot of other people.
Thank you very much. I appreciate hearing that, because this came from a place of being alone and being isolated, as we all were, and trying to make a community that didn't exist. So to hear that other people like it, because it really was just me saying, well, I'll order 50 copies, and if I get to keep a couple for myself, if I have a copy that I can hold in hand and read it when I'm tired, then I made success. But the fact that it reached other people and that it's growing, and I've made so many great friends from it, like you, it's really a gift that keeps on giving. So thank you for that.
And for those that would like to learn more, I'm going to have all the links in the video description or the podcast description, where you can find Joey Royale and all the cool games that he's making. And when you come back with your next Kickstarter or next game launch, please share with us, and we'll get the word out there.
It would be my pleasure, and thank you very much. I will.
Well, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show. You're doing great work, and just keep it up.
Thanks, Gary. You too. Right back at you, pal.